you don't know me, I'm Dana Parfitt. I live right here in Groton and I hang out at the library a lot. And I don't have formal cooking training. This is live your life, learn, and keep doing better until it works out. So that's where we are. And because we're not a fancy TV show where they've got all these other cooking equipment and gadgets, and we don't have 3 or 4 hours to sit around watching that roast cook, we're going to do some pretend and some real cooking. But it all will work out. So you've got your handouts. And what I want to point out first on your handouts, you've got 3 recipes. And those 3 recipes are all things that you're going to be sampling tonight, and that are recipes that I'm going to walk through for 2 of them. I'm not going to walk through the muffins, but we'll talk about the muffins because the muffins are really good. All right, so pot roast. The first thing about pot roast isn't a particular cut of meat. Pot roast is a way of cooking meat. And New England is really famous for their pot roast. Some places in the country you go to, they haven't even got a clue what pot roast is. And this is my wonderful daughter-in-law, Kristen, who is here to help and serve. So always be nice to the help because she works really hard and is a wonderful daughter-in-law as well. So I'm very lucky. So pot roast is where you take a tougher cut of meat and you cook it for a slow time with steam and flavor to make it very tender. And the best way to do that is by using an enameled cast iron pan. This one has a lid. It didn't arrive tonight, but that's fine because we're not really actually going to put it in the oven tonight. You'll see my red pot was here at Corn Chowder if you were here at Corn Chowder. We also made blueberry jam in that pot if you came to the jam making class. So it's a very versatile pot. You can cook with it on top of your stove, in your oven, out on your grill, on the fire pit. They're great. They're heavy, so be prepared. And as you can see, they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. So this one is oval, but I could still put it on my burner at home and cook with it on top of the stove. I have many pieces of cast iron. It's kind of a southern addiction. And seeing that I'm from the South, I think there's more than 30 pieces of cast iron in my house. So at different classes, we'll talk about different cast iron because that really does work well. And it's such a great investment because you buy one piece and it's going to last your lifetime and probably your kids' lifetimes. So it's well worth it, and it just holds heat in a certain way. So that when you're cooking a pot roast, what you're doing is braising it. And braising is very different from boiling. Boiling is where you're going to have your item covered. Think of your boiling potatoes. Your potatoes are going to be covered in water, and the water is going to rapidly boil. You'll see it boiling. In braising, you want the heat to simmer that liquid. You don't want it to be boiling and bubbling, because for meat, if it's boiling and bubbling, that's going to cause the tendons in the meat to tighten up and make it tough, not moist. And we want that tough piece of meat to be as moist and relaxed as it can be. So it's kind of like putting it into the hot tub so it can just kind of chill and relax. You want the liquid not to cover it totally like it would boiling. You're going to go about halfway up. You're going to keep it at a lower temperature, so it's going to be braising. So a lot of people will say, well, do I have to brown it before I cook it? No. For pot roast, you do not. If you were making a slicing roast, which are different because you want them to hold their shape and you want to be able to slice them, you would brown that roast first. And when I say brown it, you would put a little bit of oil or fat of some time in your pot, heat it up, and then you would sear every side of your meat till it turns brown. That's browning your meat. For a pot roast, you don't need to brown it because we don't want it to keep its shape. We want it to fall apart. We want it to get nice and soft and fork tender. I never want to use a knife with my pot roast. I want to just have to use my fork because it's so moist and delicious. So that's an extra step. We don't have to brown the meat. So yay, more simple work. So what we do, we take our pot, whichever type we're using, and if you don't have a pot like this, life is not going to end. You still can make wonderful pot roast. You can use any other type of baking dish that you have that can go into the oven. If it has a lid, great. If it doesn't have a lid, cover it tightly with aluminum foil, so tight that you can't see steam coming out because you want the steam inside, because it's the steam that helps get those juices into the pot roast. So because we're doing pretend on some things tonight, I'm going to show you a roast, but I'm not going to actually prepare it fully, because this will go home with my daughter-in-law, and then she's going to cook it later in the week. So my son will be extremely happy to see her when she comes home. So this particular roast is a bone-in center-cut roast. So it's got a bone right over here. There are lots of pot roasts that are boneless. And if you look at page 4 of your handouts, at the top it tells you what kind of meat to look for. You're looking for a chuck roast with a bone in or a bone out, and different butchers will call them different things. So all those different names that you see on there, where it might be a shoulder type of a boneless roast or an arm boneless roast, anything that says chuck roast is a good roast to have. And if you're there at the meat counter and you don't see something that looks right, or nothing's saying, nothing says the word chuck, talk to whoever works in the meat department. Talk to their butcher. Say, look, I want to make a pot roast and I'm looking for a chuck piece of meat. They will show you right away what you're looking for. They're really great. This time of year, they're going on sale because it's a good winter kind of thing coming up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 to 5 pound piece, depending on how big you're cooking for. If it's just 2 people, you're going to want something smaller. If you've got a bigger family, something bigger. The rules are all the same, whether it's a large piece or a small piece. I'm going to take this meat, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to put it into my pot. It's not going to fit in the pot with the packaging on it unless I do this. So there we go. See, I told you we're going to pretend and have magic today. So that's where our meat would go. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take a little olive oil, brush it on there all over your meat. What that's going to do is that's going to help your seasonings to stick to it before you get going. So we take our olive oil, we brush it. If you're a hand person, you can use your hands. It's whatever you're comfortable with. I don't personally like the feel of rubbing it with my hands, so I always use my pastry brush. So we brush on our olive oil. If you have another favorite oil you like to use a different type of oil. Whatever type of oil you want. I don't suggest using butter or anything that's a solid, because with it braising, that can kind of do a little lumping and clumpings, and we don't want that. So use some type of an oil. Then thyme and pepper. Those are the 2 most common spices used in pot roast. If you like something different, add it. I caution you, don't use salt, because what's going to happen is your braising liquid is going to get very concentrated as it slowly cooks. So if you put salt in there, that salt's going to be standing out a lot as the liquid evaporates, and it might be very salty. Wait until the end to put salt in there, because any of the liquids that you're going to add are always going to have some salt in them, so don't use salt. Stick with these guys. Then you're going to add garlic. Whatever kind of garlic you want. You can use garlic powder, you can use fresh garlic, you can use jar from my refrigerator, whatever kind of garlic you have on hand. These are the 3 most common flavors. You're going to put that right in here on top of your roast. Then the next thing we go to is we need braising liquid. The most flavorful braising liquid is onion soup, because it has seasonings, it's got flavor, it's got concentrated onions. I use my homemade onion soup because that's what I have on hand. I know the flavors that are in it. I know it doesn't have salt, so it's not going to give me extra salt. You can use a canned soup. You can use a packaged soup mix. And in your recipe, it gives you those explanations. If you're using a condensed soup, make sure you add an extra can of other liquid. Same for the package, an extra amount of liquid. The package mix can go sprinkled just straight onto your meat, and that will work out just fine. Then you're going to top it off with your beef broth. And how much you use is going to depend on how big your roast is, how big your pot is, because you want that line to be halfway up your roast. You don't want it swimming and covered totally. You want it about halfway up. So for your pot, your roast, you might need a cup, you might need 2 cups. It just depends on how much you're going with. That right there is all you need to do to prepare your pot roast. 5 minutes. Simple, easy, in the pot. Put the lid on it, into the oven. Now your oven is not going to be a super hot oven. This is a low and slow kind of process. 325 is an average for the oven. If you go to 350, you're okay. I really like 325 the best. Don't ever get to 400. That's too hot. That liquid will be boiling, and that's not going to give you the same tenderness that you want. So stick with your 325. You put your lid on it, you put it in the oven, set your timer for 90 minutes. If you've got a bigger roast, go ahead and go straight to 2 hours. For this size roast, because this is a 4.5 pound, I would go 2 full hours before I even open the oven and look at it. You're going to smell it cooking. It's going to smell wonderful. You're going to want to look at it. Leave it covered as long as you can because you're keeping that steam in there. It's getting into that meat. It's tenderizing it. It's making it wonderful. When your timer goes off at your 90 minutes, you're going to open it up and you're going to look at it. You're then going to get, let's see, my fork went somewhere. Any kind of a fork. It can be a regular dinner fork, a large fork. And you're going to go right to the center, and you're going to take your fork and see if you can twist it. If you can twist and that meat is moving, then you're getting really close on that. If it's totally stiff and not moving, back in for 30 minutes. At 30 minutes, check it again. If you've got a little bit of movement, then you're at the point, once you've got a little movement in the center, that you're going to add vegetables. Or, if you don't like vegetables, don't add vegetables. It's your recipe, your easy deal. And when it comes to vegetables, potatoes and carrots are the standard for everybody. If you like something else in there that can hold up, root vegetables are totally the best. Something like broccoli would never work, and I can't even imagine it. So yeah, I saw that face too. So, and again, use what you have on hand. If you've got baking type of potatoes, use them. If you've got Yukon Golds, use them. Whatever kind of potatoes you have at home, you can use them. If you're purposely buying something for the recipe, these kind of little potatoes are great. You don't have to peel them. You don't have to do anything. You just shake your potatoes right into that pot, move them around some. Same, you can use any carrots you want. Baby carrots are quick and fast. Pop them right in there. Put them, make sure they get around into the liquid. Don't just have them right side on the top. You can even lift the roast and let some slide underneath it. Put your cover back on. Back into the oven. From that point on, you're checking it every 30 minutes until it's as tender as you want. Your vegetables are going to be much more forgiving than you think. They're not going to turn to mush. They're going to hold their shape because they're pretty solid, and they're not boiling. They're just kind of steaming, so they don't get all mushy and soggy from soaking it all in. They get flavorful and wonderful. And you've got all your onion flavors that they're soaking up too. So that's where we're going. So once you're ready to take it out, then we're going to move to the other side of the table, where there really is pot roast in that one. So now you're at the point where you've got your pot. And yes, this is a very heavy pot when it has pot roast and vegetables, and you have to remember that when you're going to take things out. But it's also wonderful. So you're going to, at this point, take your meat out of your pan. And sometimes this has to be a little creative because your meat truly is going to fall apart. A spoon might work best for you. A fork might work best for you. But basically, you're spooning it right out onto your plate. I already took vegetables out of this one so that we don't have the vegetables in here. But same kind of thing. Your vegetables could go right on that same exact plate. Get my towel here so I'm not making too big of a mess on the tablecloth. And your pot roast, see now the fork's at the other end. Your pot roast totally falls right to pieces. It's soft, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. Simple and easy. Truly, you don't need a knife. You can take your tongs, pull off whatever you want, serve it on your plate. The gold is in the pot. This is totally culinary gold. Chefs all over will talk about what's in this pot. And what I'm going to show you a little is that's the browning liquid. It's all condensed. It's all come down. Now, what you can do with this liquid now is a couple of choices. Americans like standard gravy, so you can make gravy, which is easy and simple. In Europe, they're more into sauces. You can cook this down by itself, let it reduce a little bit more, and it becomes a very thick, sweet sauce that you can then use to make stir fry with. You can use it in other meat dishes, and restaurants will just go crazy that, oh, this is the best sauce ever. Because in most European countries, they don't serve gravy like we do on mashed potatoes and meat. They'll use a simple sauce on a little bit and rarely ever on potatoes. That's just not their thing. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to make this into gravy because it's so simple. And again, it's the same pot. You're not having to mess up something else. We've now cooked a roast, potatoes, carrots, and now we're going to make gravy all in the one pot. So simple, so easy, a lot less cleanup. I'm all for that. So now the test is, will our burner work properly? We had a problem one round, but we're going to hope that it's going good this time. So what we do is we're going to bring this to a boil. And because it has reduced down, it's thick, it's concentrated, so we're going to add some water to it just to thin it out a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot. We're going to thin that out a little bit, and I have a whisk. Because this is cast, it's enameled cast iron, metal utensils are not the best for it. You really want to use a whisk that is a silicone of some type because it can scratch and scrape. So if you saw, all of my utensils that I'm using all have rubber coatings on them because you can scratch and scrape your surface, and you don't want to do that. There will also be lots of meat bits stuck all around on the side and on the bottom. So as it's heating up, you want to really go around and kind of scrape all that goodness off because that's all flavor. You don't want to get rid of that flavor. You want to keep that. At this point, the seasonings that are in our gravy are the seasonings that we put into our pot roast. So we've got thyme, we've got pepper, we've got garlic. You can taste this and decide if you want salt or if you want something else. Oh, and we have onion, tons of onion. I don't put any salt in this because I feel that the broth from the onions has given us enough salt. What you will find when you go to get your sample tonight is in the back, there is salt and pepper shakers, so if you feel you need that, help yourself to it. So let's see. Are we getting hot? We are getting hot, yay. All right, that'll take it a couple of minutes. So while we're doing it, we stir it all around. We keep scraping off any bits that we come along to. That should heat up really quickly. And then we're just going to make a simple gravy. But we can also make it as complex as you want. Some people are very opposed to putting cream in their gravy. It's considered a very bad thing and not to do it. However, it gives your gravy an extra depth of flavor. So I always use it. However, let me tell you, I don't eat gravy for the most part because it's just not something that appeals to me. My husband would absolutely divorce me in a hurry if there was not gravy anytime there were mashed potatoes in our house. The one year I said, maybe we wouldn't have mashed potatoes and gravy at Thanksgiving, I thought there was going to be no Thanksgiving. You would have thought that I had killed his dog or something the way he was going on. So for some people, gravy is a real important thing. For me, it is not. But I faithfully make it all the time. All right, let's see. We are getting there almost. We're going to let it just sit for a second or two, and then we'll come back to it. So in making gravy, the simplest thing to do is to make a slurry of cornstarch and water. Some people will say, well, why can't I just use flour? Flour will not hold up if you want to freeze it. Cornstarch is what you would want to use if you plan to freeze any leftovers, because flour will break apart and clump, and when you then go to try and reheat it after it's been in the freezer, you're going to get this clumpy, lumpy mess that just, there's almost nothing you can do to save it and make it taste like it did before. But if you use cornstarch or any other type of a starch, it will work. So that if you have gluten allergies, you can use a xanthan gum or any other starches that are gluten-free. But cornstarch is truly the best for generic thickening. And basically you're using equal parts of water and cornstarch. So in my bowl here, I will put cornstarch. And this is like the only time that I would use this type of a measuring cup for liquid. because liquid requires its own measuring cups. If you didn't know, definitely learn that, because liquid measures out differently than dry. So always use a liquid measuring cup for a recipe if it's a liquid. In making a slurry, you're doing a 50-50, so it doesn't matter what utensil you use. As long as you're getting the same parts, you are good. All right, and let's see, we're going to use this one. And then we just stir it up, and we continue to stir it until there are no lumps. And it pretty much disintegrates instantly into the water. Your water doesn't have to be hot or cold. It can be just room temperature and work just fine. I see a few little bubbles coming, so we're getting there. And at this point, because I like to put cream in there, I'm going to put probably a little less than that fourth a cup right there into it, so that it just gives it a little more body in there. And I hear some bubbling. And in a few minutes when we take our break, you can come right up here and take a look at what it looks like and how it samples out. But again, like I say, it's your gravy. You're going to make it however you want it to be. All right. You know that saying, a watch pot never boils? Well, I think we're there. So the meat tonight, I used 2 boneless chuck roast and 2 that were bone-in chuck roast. And the key is, don't throw those bones away. Save your bones, because then you can boil them down to make bone broth, which is wonderful. And we talked about that in one of the canning classes. And if you don't want to can, you can put it right into the freezer and use it to make any kind of soups, stews, gravies. All right, so now this is starting to boil, so I'm just going to pour about half of that in there, give it a stir, and basically it's going to thicken right up really quickly, and it will be gravy. And that's as simple and fast as it is. It does not take a lot of time at all to make gravy. Some people like it kind of thin, some people like it really thick. Again, it's your gravy, so however thick or thin you like it is how you're going to do it. And we've made gravy in the time that I was yakking my mouth here. So, you know, that is how simple cooking can be for you. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's simple, it's easy. This is where I would turn it off because I like thin sauces. My husband would say, no, it's not thick enough. So I would then continue to cook for him. So we are good right there. So now we have made a beautiful gravy right there in that pot to go with our wonderful meat. So at this point, we're going to take a break. You're going to go to the back. There's a plate already prepared for you that you've got roast, vegetables. There is a side of gravy that you can put on it if you want or not. And there's also muffin and butter, so get your servings. Come back and after the break. We're going to continue on with a few other pieces. All right, so the first thing I want to talk to you about now is the muffin. It is the 3rd page of your recipes, I believe, and it's called a simple muffin because it's just that. It's simple, it's easy, it's just a few ingredients. You can make it plain, or you can make it with any flavor that you want. Last week I made raspberry muffins because I had raspberries on hand, and those are great. Tonight the muffins have apples and cinnamon in them because, of course, it's apple season and they're kind of like all over. But you can have them plain. You can have them with any filling that you like. You could just use a different flavoring instead of vanilla. You could use orange flavoring or lemon flavoring, whatever type of deal. It's a simple muffin that you can make over and over again in many different flavors to go with many different things. So it's very easy. The one thing I always say about making muffins is use muffin papers. Make it easy on yourself. Don't struggle with a muffin pan that's going to stick and be awful. Muffin papers, you can get them at Dollar Tree. They're simple, they're easy. It's great for then. You can throw it in the kids' lunch or everywhere else. It's all contained. Simple, easy. I use a scoop always when scooping my batter into a muffin pan. That way all my muffins are pretty much the same size. I don't have to worry about, oh, I have 4 really big ones and then 3 little ones that are now overcooked because they were too little. A scoop is so great. You can use it for so many different things. It makes it easy and simple. But yeah, muffins can be the perfect addition to a meal that is quick, fast, easy, and somebody thinks, oh, you made those muffins? How great, you know? And it's a 10-minute kind of thing that you throw it together and put it in your oven. So muffins always are a good thing. And as Kim said, when we have chili in December, we'll do corn muffins then at that point. What else can we talk about with roast? All right, so on your back page, the question is always, I made a roast. My sister was going to come by and eat with me. She didn't. Now I have all this roast left over. What do I do with it? Well, have we got a list of ideas for you? Always, you can eat the same meal the next day if that's what you want to do. That's my husband's absolute favorite. He loves that rerun kind of life of leftovers. I'm happy to see it one day and see it as something different the next day. So we compromise. But this pot roast is great to take and make a vegetable soup with, especially if you've already got potatoes and onion and carrots that are left over. Just dice those vegetables up small, use your meat, throw some of that gravy you made in there with a little more of your broth, add some noodles if you want, and you've got a quick, easy pot of soup. You can do the same if your kids like to eat ramen noodles. Throw away the little seasoning packet, use your seasonings from here, throw your meat and vegetables in it, and you've got a fabulous ramen deal. Add a little soy sauce, a little sesame oil, and it's fabulous. Same deal. You can turn your pot roast into Mexican anything. Mix a little taco seasonings with it. You can do quesadillas, you can do tacos, you can do burritos, you can make nachos with beef on top of them. So your roast can be so many different things that you've just made this nice pull apart, fall apart meat that can go with almost anything. And then that's the next thing. Just like you would make pulled pork sandwiches, you can make pulled beef sandwiches with this, mixing in a little of your gravy, putting it into a sandwich, grilled cheese sandwiches with a little bit of the shredded meat on it. If you don't want to use just plain American cheese, use some other specialty cheeses. It really can make an absolutely fabulous grilled cheese sandwich. And what better things on a nice cold night. Same type of deal, because it's meat. It can go with anything. You can make a beef stroganoff with it. You can put it into a rice and make a rice dish, a pasta dish. Anything that you would use ground beef for, you can use your chopped meat right there for. Pizza. One of the favorites that my grandson has just discovered is barbecue anything pizza. So it's barbecue chicken, barbecue beef, on top of pizza. It's wonderful, delicious. You can use that as your starter for shepherd's pie or a pot pie. Again, the possibilities for leftovers are just as wide as your imagination. Hand pies, empanadas, throw that meat, those vegetables all diced up into a dough, pop it in the oven and eat it. Use it in omelets with some peppers and onions, make it into a quiche. Stromboli, another hand kind of food. All of those and more. It truly is. Anything that you would use ground beef, use your meat right there. The key is don't let it sit in your refrigerator for more than 4 days. Think about food safety. After 4 days, it needs to go into your freezer if you still have some left over. It'll last a long time in your freezer as long as you're freezing it correctly. Put it into freezer bags, sealer bags, freezer containers, any of those, into your freezer it goes. If you know you made pot roast on Sunday and the rest of your week is crazy and chaotic and you're not going to be using it any, then that night, chop it up, cut it up, section it out into other containers, put it right in the freezer. Then you've got other meals to pull out later, fast and quick for those days when nothing else is happening right and you need a quick, fast meal. It's there. It's already cooked. You can defrost it in the microwave fast and easy. If you're making it into soup, it'll defrost right in the pot with the broth. So it's quick, it's easy, and it's wonderful, and it will last a good long time. The rule always is label what you put in your freezer with the name of what it is and the date. So later it's not mystery meat, and you're then trying to decide what it is and what you're going to do with it. So that is our night of pot roast. So who's got a question they want? Go for it.
So if you wanted to do a stir fry or something like that, is that something you should do like right after you extract your roast?
All right, so the question is, can you keep it in the pot and leave it overnight? The answer would be no. You would need to take it out of this pot, tuck it into your fridge, then the next day or the day after when you want to make your stir fry, bring your sauce out, start again in fresh. Because it has meat, it can't stay out of the refrigerator for more than like 2 to 3 hours. So it's got to go into the refrigerator. So, somebody else have a question? Yes.
Can you make it in a slow cooker?
That's something I was going to talk about too. Everyone always says, can you do this in a crock pot, slow cooker, that type of thing? You can. You will see there's a difference in the flavor because the crock pot doesn't keep the same steam in that the cast iron pot will do. Because the lid is so heavy, it creates its own steam, because if you look at the lid on the bottom, it is domed and curved, so it creates steam, not necessarily water dripping down like you might see in your crock pot. It creates steam. So that's the difference. But you can do a very good pot roast in a crock pot, but the depth of flavor will be different than doing it in here. But again, use whatever tools you have and go from there. So yeah. That's the same. You can use any other pan that you're going to tent it with aluminum foil. The tighter the seal, the better, because you're keeping that steam in with the juice. All right, what else you need to know?
If you're doing a smaller amount or in a thinner pot, would you want to lower the heat maybe?
You can. If you've got a smaller size, like sometimes you'll see like a 1.5 pound type of a chuck roast, or if you're using a thinner metal, yes, you can go down to 300 degrees. I wouldn't go less than 300 degrees because then you're not going to get enough steam created around your meat. But yes, you can turn the temperature down. The same as, I'm not an advocate. The fire department would not like me to hear say, leave it in the oven and go run your errands and come back. But if you find you have to run to the store or to pick up the kid, yes, you can always turn your temperature down to 300 and run that errand and come right back. But remember, my friends at the fire department do not want me to tell you that. So I don't want to be in trouble with them. So, all right. Any other questions?
I'm reading through the recipe, and I don't see that you took the roast and seared it in the pan first.
That's correct. We talked about that. For a pot roast, you do not need to sear it because the point of searing it is to help the meat keep its shape. We don't want it to keep its shape. We want it to fall apart. We want it to be fork tender and flaky and soft, so we don't need to sear it.
Second question, if I was going for more of the European kind of sauce, could I have deglazed that pot with wine?
Yes, you can certainly deglaze that pot with wine. And if you're doing Julia Child's type of deal, she's going to use a red wine and then like a tablespoon of tomato paste to give it another depth of flavor in her sauce. But yes, you can use white or red wine would work for deglazing that pot. Yep, absolutely.
In the muffins,
yes.
Can you switch out the butter with oil?
I have never switched it out, but yes, you probably could convert it out. This is a recipe I've always used butter in. I've also used plant-based butter in it, and that works very well. I've never tried it with oil, so do it and let us know.
Muffins. If you weren't going to use fat in them, could you switch it with applesauce? And if you did, what would happen?
I think the applesauce would work because it works the same as an oil. So I think the applesauce would work.
Would you suggest a bone-in meat, that chuck meat, or is there any difference in flavor?
There really isn't. What I find is the bone-in has a little more fat than the boneless. And it's a toss-up as to whatever's on sale, what they have the most of. If I'm stocking up my bones to make a big pot of beef broth, then I'm always looking for the roast that's got the bone in it, so that then I get double duty out of it. But flavor-wise, I think really they're about the same. So yeah, all right. Okay, well, if we have no other questions, then thank you so much for, oh, wait, there is another question.
He was asking if you can swap out, instead of heavy cream, could you use half and half?
Yes, you could use something lighter. You could use just a regular milk, whatever. And the same, if you've got somebody who has milk allergies in your house, using an almond milk is okay. It still gives you that kind of creaminess without having the extra stuff there too. So yep, you can definitely do that. So, oh, and the other thing I'm going to tell you that I've seen 50,000 deals on Facebook about, if you're looking to buy cast iron pots, Target has a great deal. You get 2 of them for like $45. It's a big one and a smaller one. So if you're shopping for cast iron pots, and not Target, I'm sorry, Costco. Costco, not Target, Costco. So if you know somebody with Costco membership and you were looking for those, check it out. I haven't been there to look at them, but at least 4 people sent me the flyer that they saying, do you know? And it's like, so now I know and I'm sharing it. So, but truly, in December and after Black Friday, that's when you will find cast iron pots on sale almost everywhere. Kohl's ends up with a huge stash of them. Everybody's, you know, stocking them up. And every cooking chef out there is like touting the things that we all used to use, and now they're like the new best thing. So they are available in a lot of places now. So, all right. Hopefully we'll see some of you next time. And if not, let us know what you want to see. Thank you all.